Welcome to part 4 of Earth Deeds series on understanding and responding to our climate impacts. So far, we've established that humans are the primary cause of climate change and that we need to work together to create resilient communities. Carbon offsetting was introduced as one method of responding to our climate impacts, and I now want to take a look at some of the controversies surrounding the voluntary carbon market. Okay, so first, offsetting is a very inefficient way to fund projects. The offsets need to be verified by a third party before they can be sold, and that costs a lot of money. And then there are traders and consultants, project developers, other middlemen. So very often, very little money is actually making it to the projects that they're meant to be supporting. A BBC report estimated that as little as 30% makes it to the projects. Now, perhaps the biggest controversy in the carbon offset world is around the concept of additionality, which means the project could only have happened through the financial support provided by the sale of the offsets. This is important because if it was just business as usual, if the project was going to happen anyway, well, then it's not really offsetting anything. And the problem is it can be very tricky to prove that a project is, in fact, additional and not just business as usual. And there have been estimates that 20 to 70% are not additional, which really calls into question the integrity of the whole market. Next, offsets have also been commonly compared to 16th century indulgences, where one could pay the church to absolve one of their sins. And many complain that offsets similarly allow one to buy a clean conscience while delaying meaningful action. Another problem with offsets is that they're tied to market forces, which, although markets do have a certain efficiency, they also give a misleading impression of what the emissions really cost. For example, their prices plummeted when there was an oversupply of offsets in the European market. Now, likely due to all this controversy and confusion, there is a general lack of confidence in the market and a feeling that the whole thing is just a bunch of greenwashing. A study in 2012 found that only 35% of respondents trusted claims of carbon neutrality. Over 50% believe offsetting doesn't produce real reductions, and 70% believe offsetting companies are just not being transparent in their dealings. Okay, finally, because of verification and other costs, project developers generally support very large projects because they need an economy of scale to make it worth it. And these projects tend not to have much personal meaning to the purchasers of the offsets and generally are quite far from where they live. All right, so I struggled with these problems for years, and sometime in 2008, it struck me. What if we created an alternative to carbon offsetting? We could call it carbon onsetting. And it would look a lot like offsetting. We'd still measure and then reduce our emissions, which are really important things to do. But then, what if we dropped the whole controversial concept of neutrality and instead priced emissions using our best understanding of their true costs, and then used these funds to support projects of our choosing? This thought became a passion and eventually led me to leave my job directing a nonprofit I founded and start a new organization. And it's called Earth Deeds. And it's developing online tools to help groups understand and transform their carbon footprints through supporting sustainability projects of their choice. I'm very excited about Earth Deeds as I feel it resolves the major controversies of carbon offsetting and also offers new opportunities. So let's look at these. We can cut out verifiers and other middlemen, and we can get over 85% of funds to the projects. And the whole concern around additionality becomes irrelevant because we're not claiming to offset emissions or conferring the label of carbon neutrality. And rather than guilty indulgences, we're saying let's be grateful for the Earth's gifts, notably fossil fuels. Let's recognize that there's a cost in using these gifts, and let's pay it forward by helping create sustainable and resilient communities. We also believe that we should be acknowledging our emissions using the best scientific data around their true costs, which at this time is what's called the social cost of carbon that has come out of the Obama administration. Furthermore, all transactions can be transparent and help build trust and understanding. Instead of carbon neutrality, we're using the term carbon conscious. And finally, by cutting out the middlemen, we can support small, local, even non mitigating projects that have meaning to us, our families, and our communities. Okay, well, thank you for viewing this series on climate change and for working together to better understand and respond to our climate impacts.